am a hot mess. In fact, I'm soaking in. I know I look a little awkward right now, but I am a hot mess and have been my entire life. In fact, I remember the middle school years were especially challenging. 8th grade, I would go home after school and before football practice for an afternoon snack. This snack consisted of a 99-cent Totino's party pizza, delicious pepperoni nuggets and all, and a can of Mountain Dew as my afternoon snack before dinner. And so I would go home every day before football practice. I'd bake the delicious Totino's party pizza at 450 degrees for 9 minutes. I'd take it out, I'd cut it on the cardboard that it came in, I'd move myself to the couch, I'd put a pillow on my lap, and I'd put the pizza and the cardboard right on top. One hand I had the can of Mountain Dew, and I had the pizza right next to my face on the other. I was too dang impatient to let the pizza cool down for even 1 minute, and so I took a bite and pulled away, with all the toppings falling directly on my chin. Now it sat there, and as my hands were full of things I didn't know what to do, but I finally wiped it away along with the skin on my chin. And I had a 2nd-degree burn on my chin from a pizza injury. I, in fact, missed 3 weeks of football from this said pizza injury because I couldn't strap my chin strap on for my helmet. I am literally a hot mess. In fact, my 8th grade football photo, I couldn't even see over my belly to lace up my pants all the way. I've been a hot mess my entire life. Now, I'm not afraid of being a hot mess, and I learned it first from the greatest teacher I've ever known, and that's my mom, Betty. At the age of 16, when I was 16, my mom got diagnosed with cancer, and she was my only parent, and she was my everything in my life. And for 5 years, Betty fought cancer. And she lost her life 15 years ago, but just a couple of weeks before she died, I found myself hearing this story. I didn't witness it firsthand, but I wish I would have. It was one of those beautiful spring days in North Dakota, and those don't come around very often. When they do, everybody throws on their shorts so their gams can get some much-needed sun. Betty throws on her shorts and goes to the grocery store, walks up and down the aisles through the produce section and the dairy section. But my pastor tells me that Betty had her urine bag flopping around by her ankle the whole time. Because from so much complication with chemotherapy and radiation, she had to have her bowels in a urine bag. And she didn't care that she was a hot mess because it was a nice day. And so flopping around by her ankles back and forth through the grocery store was this urine bag. My mom was the very first hot mess I ever knew in my life. And she wasn't afraid to show it. She didn't hide. In fact, rather, she allowed people to see the real her. Broken and beautiful. I think our world right now is really interesting because things seem pretty inauthentic and things seem pretty fake. Most people are afraid to admit that they're a hot mess. But I want to be like Betty. I want to be willing and able to show that I am a hot mess and I don't have it all together. In fact, I think when we have the audacity to do that, community is really formed. So the charge today is to be vulnerable and to be authentic to who you are, hot mess and all. We deeply desire compassion and community, but we think that success and achievements are the way to curate that. And we're incredibly wrong. It's okay to be broken. It's okay to not have it all figured out. It's okay to be vulnerable. Those are the definition of a hot mess. Owning your hot mess will draw people to you. 7 years ago, my wife Emily and I deeply craved being parents. It was something rooted within us that we knew that we were made to be mom and dad. And so we got to practice, which was really great. And nothing happened. And so we went to the doctor, and the doctor put us on what's called a sex schedule. And I don't know if you've ever been on a sex schedule before, but it is not as great as it sounds. Now, don't get me wrong, it's like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still good. But we were put on this sex schedule. Now, if 18-year-old Erik heard this Erik complaining about a sex schedule too, we'd have some major issues. But it was two broken people, two hot messes trying to create something beautiful. And we failed. We battled infertility, and from there, we were ashamed and we hid in the shadows. We didn't want people to know our vulnerability and how broken we felt. So we went back to the doctor, and the reproductive medicine doctor prescribed for us IUI, interurinary insemination. Not the sexiest term I've ever heard. And we tried our first transfer, and it failed. And we tried our second, and our third, and our fourth, and our fifth transfers over the course of a year or two, and it failed every time. And each time it failed, we shriveled up. We hid in the darkness, in the shadows, in the corners, and it was never such a lonely time in my life than through that infertility. We were embarrassed about our hot mess, and we weren't talking about it. And we went back to the doctor, and then the doctor said, now IUI didn't work, let's try IVF, in vitro fertilization. And try number 6, my wife gets pregnant. This overwhelming feeling of joy. And we told our friends, and we told our family. And then we had to tell them that my wife miscarried. I couldn't fix it, and I couldn't control it. And so we realized that when we talked about it, then we had to fix more things, and we had to tell more people, and they were broken too. So we went back into the shadows. We hid again because we didn't want anybody to see our brokenness. We didn't want our crap to stink up other people's lives. Time number 7, months and months and months of recovery. And time number 7, my wife gets pregnant again, and she miscarries again. Time number 8, my wife miscarries again after getting pregnant. And we go back to the doctor on time number 9. And my wife lays on that table, and we're told that we have 5 embryos remaining. We have been transferring 2 at a time, so we thought we had 3 more tries. And the doctor says, 4 of these embryos are no good. You have 1 left. And on that table, my wife broke down, tears that I've never seen before. And I lost it. And our hot mess had never felt so hurtful. Because we weren't talking about it. We were just holding on to it for ourselves. But we prayed and prayed and prayed. And this month, my daughter Finley turns 2 years old. It's the most incredible thing that's ever happened in my life, is becoming a father. But when we were in the midst of the hot mess, we didn't have the strength to talk about it. We were afraid of showing our vulnerability because nobody wants to be seen as broken. But here's the deal, is that once we opened up, we realized that we weren't alone. Once we proclaimed that we were broken, we found empathy and community. Once we finally showed our hurt, we were completely embraced. And once we opened up and started talking about it, people have run to us with similar stories of struggle. Family members, close friends come to us now as their place of strength because we finally had the courage to proclaim that we're a hot mess. The story doesn't end there. About a year ago, my wife and I went back to reproductive medicine. So we were hoping for number 2. Turns out I snuck one past the goalie, and we got Simon at home, everybody. So I have 2 kids at home and a wife. And I can talk about it now easily and with joy because I have a happy ending. But the happy ending should not dictate how we own our hot mess. And in fact, most of us are struggling in one way or another. And to own that hot mess is a really important thing. Now, a wise man told me once that when we talk about our successes, it creates competition. But when we talk about our failures and our shortcomings, it creates compassion and community. And I can't think of a better place that this is shown than a group like Alcoholics Anonymous or any anonymous group, where people walk in feeling like they've hit rock bottom, that they're the only ones, and that their life is miserable, that they are a stinky pile of a hot mess. And when they walk in, they're greeted by a bunch of people who are all hot messes trying to figure it out together. That's community. Why don't our workplaces and our schools and our churches look like that? When you own your hot mess, you'll find community. I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. My wife and I just started watching it. And in the very first episode, Tyrion Lannister says this: "Never forget what you are. The rest of the world will not. Wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you." Don't forget that you're a hot mess and brag about it. Share it to people. Own it through your vulnerability and transparency. But be the one to tell your own story, because somebody else will tell it for you if you don't. You are the author of your own story. The good, the bad, the everything. But make sure you're the one telling the story. It's okay to admit that you're a hot mess, that you don't have it all figured out. In fact, I think people are drawn to that. Because if you're acting like your crap doesn't stink, everybody just smells stinky crap. So if life is a bit messy, don't hide it. Embrace it. Laugh through it, but for God's sake, stop hiding it. It's okay to be a hot mess. And in fact, people are drawn to your vulnerability. Through that, stronger communities will be formed. You're going to have a better workplace, better schools, better churches, and a better community to live in. That's the kind of space I want to be a part of. So if you have the audacity, if you're wild enough to brand yourself as a hot mess, to not have it all figured out, saddle up and go for a ride. Thank you.